So on Wednesday we had the biggest news of the season so far. News that came out of seemingly nowhere, but when you think about it, it was news that had been a long time coming. Christian Horner, the team principal and up to Wednesday the only team principal of Red Bull, left his position with immediate effect. This coming after leading the team for 20 years and winning a combined 14 Drivers and Constructors Championships. And he was the team principal during that utterly dominant 2023 season. Love him or hate him, Horner will go down as one of the greatest team bosses in the sport's history. Statistically, he's up there with the likes of Ron Dennis, Frank Williams, Jean Todt and Enzo Ferrari. But in the last 17 months or so, the situation has become untenable and Horner has now left his position. But even though I'm talking about the last 17 months or so, like I said, the situation appears to have been going on even longer still. So with all that in mind, why don't we have a quick timeline of events? I'm gonna need this. Oh, that's good. Even though most of it's down me now, but oh, this is cold. Also, this might just be a whack me on in the background sort of video because I am melting in here. Well, I can't really have a fan on while recording, can I? But we begin this timeline in the October of 2022. So in the October of 2022, Dietrich Mateschitz, the boss of Red Bull in Austria, died. This left a power vacuum at Red Bull, and in the middle of this were Horner and Helmut Marko, with it being reported that Horner was looking to get rid of Marko, and this started some tensions within the team. These tensions were going on as late as the start of last year, when Verstappen had to step in and say, look, if Marko goes, I go. Then what will you do? Because Max has loyalty to just two people, his dad and Marko. Nobody else. And Jos Verstappen hasn't exactly been the biggest fan of Horner either. Basically, within the Red Bull operation there are two sides. There's the Thai side and there's the Austrian side, and I think the Thais own more of the company than the Austrians do, but either way, it seemed that the Thais wanted Horner to stay, but the Austrians wanted him gone. But it wasn't just relations between the bosses and the Golden Goose's dad that were falling apart. Also at the Red Bull factory, the dominoes were beginning to fall there as well. At the end of 2023, Rob Marshall left his position to go to McLaren, and tensions between those in the design office were also ramping up. There was a spat developing between Adrian Newey and Pierre Vacher over not just the direction the car was going in, but also whose name would be on it. Through 2023, Red Bull's most dominant season on record, matching that of McLaren in 1988, there were reports that Horner was bigging up the design team of Vacher and head of aerodynamics Enrico Balbo. This led to claims that Horner had said that Newey wasn't exactly the magic bullet everybody thought he was, and that Vacher and Balbo were doing all the heavy lifting, because Newey was now only in the office 3 days a week. Horner went as far as to tell the press that they wouldn't miss Adrian Newey, and that does seem like an incredibly silly statement to make, especially considering the way the team has fallen apart since his departure to Aston Martin, where he's been given the pencil and paper to help get them to the top. But like mentioned, 2023 was a dominant season. Verstappen walked to a third world championship and set record after record after record, and increased his win tally immensely. So given all the stuff supposedly happening in the background, stuff that felt at times was conjured up to have something to talk about other than Verstappen wins again, and believe me, I had trouble looking for things to talk about beyond Hamilton wins and Vettel spins in 2018 or so, but either way, it looked like it was all working, so they might as well just keep on going as they are. So imagine everybody's surprise when the allegations surfaced in the early part of 2024, something that I haven't really addressed until now. The reason for that is because of the nature of the allegations. This is something far beyond this team has been doing something iffy or this driver might be moving, because while you can speculate on those things, there's usually evidence to support those claims. With this, it's a lot more sensitive. That's why I never did a video on it when the allegations broke. But in the interest of keeping this timeline running, in the February of 2024, it was reported in the motorsport media that Horner had been sending messages to a female employee of a sexual, controlling and coercive nature. In the wake of these allegations, 2 different investigations were conducted and Horner was cleared in both, and the female employee was removed from her position. And apparently this is all going to go to court in 2026. And the fact that Horner had been kept on in all of this was quite strange. Many people pointed out that in most other jobs, that person would be suspended pending investigation. but Horner and Red Bull turned up to pre-season testing last year like nothing had happened. He also denied the allegations, by the way, just in the interest of fairness and balance. Now, Oliver Mintzlaff, one of the shareholders and also the head of corporate projects and new investments at Red Bull, stepped in to help calm the situation, and the media circus surrounding all of this died down after a bit, but it would still be mentioned whenever any articles involving tension were brought up. It was always still there, underneath the surface. Not long after this, Adrian Newey said he'd had enough and he departed the team for Aston Martin. Now, Newey was already not in a good place. Not only was Horner backing the other guys at the design office and saying that Newey wasn't as great as people thought he was, the uncertainty surrounding those allegations really unsettled him. Now, Newey hates bullshit. It's why he left Williams. He'd been lied to by Frank about Williams doing something. I think it was signing Villeneuve because he'd been promised that he'd have an input on it. Frank gave Adrian assurances that it wouldn't happen again, but when the stories hit Autosport around the German Grand Prix of 1996 saying that Damon Hill had been sacked, Adrian had had enough, so he went to McLaren. He worked there between 1998 and 2004 before David Coulthard spoke to Mateschitz when he joined Red Bull and said, "If we want to start winning, we need Adrian Newey." So Red Bull moved heaven and earth to be able to get him. There were rumours circulating around the time he left that Adrian had told Vacher and team to not deploy what I've been calling the botched Imola update, because it wouldn't work. And it didn't. The car stopped being a rocket ship, performance dropped, Perez fell off a cliff, and McLaren and Ferrari overtook Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. After winning 6 of the opening 7 races, following the Spanish Grand Prix, Mercedes won more races than Red Bull did. So did Ferrari, come to think of it. They went from 6 out of the 7, the 7th being scuppered by brake failure for Max at Melbourne, to winning fewer races than a team that finished behind them in the Constructors' Championship after the mid-season. But in the months that followed Adrian Newey departing, there were going to be more high-profile departures. Jonathan Wheatley announced his decision to leave the team in the August of 2024, and I covered that story at the time. It didn't seem that big of a deal for some, but when you factor in that Wheatley was the guy whipping everybody into shape and probably reads the rulebook to his kids at bedtime because he's always got his nose in it, it was a significant step. And logical. Wheatley's career ambition saw him as team principal one day, and since Horner was not suspended or sacked in the wake of the WhatsApp scandal, Wheatley went, "Oh, okay, well, it's not going to happen here, is it? Oh, hi Audi. What's that? Team principal job? Yeah, sure." And look at the turnaround that's happened at Sauber with Wheatley there. One other thing that you need to consider here is that Wheatley, Rob Marshall, who went to McLaren, and Newey had been at Red Bull since 2006, so only 12 months or so less than Christian Horner had. So after 19, nearly 20 years, they're going to get itchy feet anyway, and they want to go on and have new challenges. And Newey is certainly going to get that over at Aston Martin because Lawrence Stroll wants his cars at the front of the grid. There's going to be no opportunity there for Wheatley to get his dream job, so he took it at Audi instead, because Horner was there, and he was the boss and was, well, always going to be the boss, so he had to leave. It's just one of those things. And it isn't just a Red Bull thing, because James Vowles was another man looking to do some career advancement, and now he's over at Williams and doing some good things there. Okay, it's not quite the Mercedes gig, but Williams and Mercedes have a good partnership, so at least there's that. And Williams are now 5th in the Constructors, although Sauber is catching. Sauber, in turn, has outscored Red Bull since the Spanish Grand Prix, and at the same time, Will Courtney, the head of strategy at Red Bull, will be joining McLaren as their sporting director at the end of this year. And who usually has the best strategies in Formula 1? Red Bull does. But before we move into anything else, we need to bring Sergio Perez back into things because there's some stuff that happened there as well that might have led to Horner being sacked. Like mentioned, when Red Bull deployed the Imola upgrade that brought in a raft of handling and balance problems, Perez started falling backwards. Red Bull wasn't performing well at Monaco that year anyway, but Perez ended up in 16th, half a second off Max in the first qualifying session, and was then involved in the first lap carnage fest with Hülkenberg and Magnussen. Immediately, Perez was put under the spotlight, but then Horner offered Perez a brand new 2-year deal, which was thought to help boost Checo's confidence a bit. Did it help? No. Perez wouldn't make the podium again for the rest of the season. His best result following his final podium of that year, which was at the Chinese Grand Prix, was 4th in Miami, but after that he struggled bigly. 8th at Imola, 10th at Singapore, 12th in Qatar, but to his credit he was on for a good result at Baku, but the collision with Sainz didn't help matters. and this was the guy that Red Bull had just offered a new contract to. And I said at the time what a lot of other people were saying. Why? Like mentioned, it was to help boost his confidence, but the confidence in the car had been lost. Red Bull have a pointy car, which is what Max likes, and it's also what Checo likes, but Max is a bit further along on the old pointy scale. With that Imola upgrade, driving it was now like trying to thread a needle at warp 4.5, which is 83 times the speed of light, or able to get you to Neptune and back in 6 minutes, for reference. Either way, it's bloody difficult, and if you're as good as Verstappen, you could hold it on that knife edge for a whole Grand Prix. Everybody else has to drive the car slower because, well, they'll crash it otherwise. Basically, that Red Bull is like the super twitchy esports setups that you might have downloaded for iRacing, Assetto Corsa, the F1 games, and so on. The really good drivers can drive it right on that knife edge. It's those kinds of setups where you just turn the wheel ever so slightly and the back end just loops on you. The fast drivers can keep it on that knife edge and drive it incredibly fast and set the world record times. Us mortals, we're in the wall at the first corner. So that leads us to the start of this season. The second driver problem. Liam Lawson was chosen as Perez's replacement, but it still wasn't going to be that simple. Perez needed buying out of this 2-year contract to the tune of 14 million euros. Small change to a behemoth of an F1 team like Red Bull, but it's the fact that they had to pay it that's the concern. They locked this guy in for 2 years when he clearly wasn't capable of handling it for 2 years, and then they did the meme of, we're going to pay you 14 million to f*** off. That's another red mark against Horner and another bad decision. Lawson came in for the start of 2025 and Liam wanted to show the world what he could do now he had a Red Bull, but then he got kicked aside for Tsunoda in time for the Japanese Grand Prix. And Tsunoda has been there since, but it's not going well for him either. He did manage to qualify 12th at Silverstone, which became 11th after Behrman's penalty was applied, but he ended up finishing last of the runners and was a lap down on Norris come the end. Not great. Alex Albon has appeared on several podcasts lately talking about this second car issue, and he said that the sensitivity of these cars is so high that only one driver on the planet can drive them how they have to be driven, and that is Max Verstappen. Alex said it's like playing a first-person shooter on your computer and turning the mouse sensitivity up to maximum. Move the mouse a millimeter and it's on the other side of the screen. Much like with those esports setups. There are people that can play this way and those who can are really, really, really good, but us normal people have no hope. And as we've seen this year, the car is a hot lap merchant. It did well at Silverstone and has done well at a couple of other tracks this year, but it's taken just one single win from pole, that being at Suzuka. Jeddah, it might have done, but Piastri got the better start, as controversial as that Turn 1 incident was. But at Imola, Max did what Max does, gives receipts, and swung around the outside to take the lead and the win from Piastri. An overtaking move that was, well, simply lovely. So that leads us to the point we're at now. Horner is removed from his position, and in the last 48 hours or so, we're seeing things click into place. The best way to describe it is that Horner has been taking shots everywhere since around the October of 2022, dodging them like he's in the f***ing Matrix. But while doing all that dodging, one of the bullets has caught him, and that slowed him down. After reading so many of the articles that have been fired out since Wednesday, they all seem to be boiling down to one word: power. There was concern amongst the others that Horner was becoming a bit too big for his own boots. Because Horner wasn't just the team principal at Red Bull. He was the head of the engine side of things. He was the guy that got the visa deals done with the junior team, or sister team, whatever you want to call them, and he actually said to Oliver Mintzlaff, "Let me sort it. I will sort the problems out at RB." Mintzlaff allowed him to, and now the RB is a solid car. The car that should be the main focus of Horner's attention? Not so. So this leads into the big questions surrounding the very large orange Dutch elephant in the room. What's going to happen with Verstappen? There are two schools of thought going around the internet right now. The first is that Max has already agreed to terms with Mercedes and Horner has been ousted due to not being able to keep him. The other is that it's a deal sweetener. Horner leaves and that gives Max an incentive to stay. It's a rather large Hail Mary, but it's been done. There's also the talks about the performance clauses in Max's contract. If he's 4th or lower before the summer break, he's allowed to become a free agent. But with Mercedes willing to put up the money to buy him out, it still leaves things in both camps. And Max was at the Red Bull factory yesterday, that being Thursday the 11th of July. But this has already divided people. Some think that a switch is unlikely, some think it's already been done. Now, it's only my opinion that the smart thing to do would be to see how 2026 goes. We know that Max wants a fast car under him. He's a serial winner. He wants to have a good car so he can carry on winning. So moving would be a massive gamble. Mercedes might have a great engine next year, but what if it's unreliable? What if Honda has nailed it instead, or even Ferrari? It'd make the gamble seem like it hasn't paid off. If Max was to stay at Red Bull for 2026, it means that Mercedes can retain Russell on a 1-year deal, and at the end of that, they can look again at what's what. Another thing to factor in is that Alonso's future beyond next year is in doubt, and if and when Alonso goes, that leaves Max an opportunity to hook back up with Newey. The question is, does Max want to spend a year in a potential canal boat and then move? Or does he want to chase instant gains? That's the £1 million question. But the thing is, I don't think any of us are particularly surprised at all this. It's a shock, but it's not really a surprise. The death of Mateschitz kind of kick-started this, but the stuff that's been happening in between then and now has just added up to a point where it's now untenable. The bickering with Marko and Verstappen Sr. was to be expected, really, but then you had the allegations in early 2024, the botched upgrade at Imola, signing Perez to a 2-year deal when he clearly wasn't up to it, and there was losing Newey and Wheatley, who are two very important cogs in the Red Bull operation. The race reported yesterday that Ed Straw and Gary Anderson were milling around ready to do a piece to camera when they overheard Horner using language that was beyond language that Horner would normally use. He does have quite a dirty mouth, he Fs and Jeffs a lot, you might have seen it on Drive to Survive, but apparently this was Malcolm Tucker turned up to 11. There were reports as well in the immediate aftermath of Horner's sacking that talked about his relationships with the other team principals and team bosses, such as Toto Wolff and Zach Brown. How Horner was seemingly on one every single week trying to find some way of finding the McLarens to be illegal instead of, in his own words, fixing his own fucking car. Allegedly, the Thai family that owns 51% of Red Bull wanted Horner to stay, but the Austrians wanted Horner gone when the tech scandal broke. Apparently there was one member of the family who held 2% that was one of Horner's backers, and that was preventing Horner from being sacked. Since then, he's apparently sold that 2%, which might have allowed the Austrians to get what they wanted. I really don't know, but what remains is one of the most successful people in Formula 1 over the last 20 years is now out of a job. You either liked Christian Horner or you didn't. You might have liked the way he got stuff done because it meant Max or Seb or whoever was winning races, but some people might have found him to be an odious, slimy, toxic human being. He was certainly a character in the paddock, a panto villain if you will, and certain elements of his character would rub people up the wrong way. Such things include the gloating when Red Bull poached key Mercedes personnel away when they set up their own engine department and went on to dominate. And there was also this thing of praising the team and how good of a job they did when they were winning, but then accusing everybody and their dog of cheating when they weren't winning. But at the same time, you can't deny the success. 14 titles combined, 8 drivers with Vettel and Verstappen, and 6 constructors. So what next, besides the jungle? Podcast? Not his style. There will probably be another job for him in Formula 1, with the most hotly tipped destination being Ferrari with Frederick Vasseur under the microscope. But will Ferrari want to do that with all the baggage that Christian's bringing with him in regards to the unnamed female employee? Probably not. It's apparently been confirmed that this is the case. I guess the next thing to wait on is where Max will be next year. Only 2 more weeks before the next race, and then we'll probably find out during the summer break. All empires fall, as the saying goes, and this is definitely an empire that has fallen. But it comes at the right time because we're moving into 2026 and this will be a new era for Formula 1 and also for Red Bull. But yeah, the only thing we can do now is just wait. There's, what, 2 more weeks before the next race? I'm too warm to even think about that right now, but either way, it won't stop the clickbait from intensifying, will it? So then, a look at the Christian Horner stuff and how it's all led to this, as well as what might happen next. If this has been interesting for you and you think I made some good points, then do like the video so I know I did a good job, and for more stuff from the channel you can subscribe and also get the bell on so you can have more if you want. Massive thanks as ever go out to the rad lads over at Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help with the picture purchasing piggy bank or otherwise keep the lights on around here, there'll be a link to Patreon in the description, along with links to Discord, socials, affiliates and other bits and pieces you might want or need to know. Well, there's super thanks for the one and done kinds of donations and memberships so you can Patreon without the Patreon. So until next time, I've been Aidan Millward. Have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.